بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وإيمانا وفقها في الدين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وتجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا رب العالمين. After a long break from our lesson Aqidat al-Tahawiyya, we are back again to discuss another masterpiece on legal issues. So this time around we'll be discussing a masterpiece, a book called titled Matn al-Ashmawiyya by Sheikh Abdul Bari al-Ashmawi. And before we start reading the book, I would like us to go through some brief history about fiqh, how fiqh emerged from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, from the Meccan period to Medinan period, and how it continued from to the time of the Sahaba till it got to the time of the four Imams. Okay, so when we get to the time of the four Imams, then we discuss about Imam Malik, because the book, this masterpiece, Matn al-Ashmawi, it's based on the school of Imam Malik, based on the fiqh of Imam Malik. And then we also look at, after we will discuss the life of Imam Malik, his biography, and also look at the sources of his madhab before we start reading the book, inshallah. Okay, so today we will look at definition of fiqh and the scope of fiqh and how fiqh started in the Meccan period and also in the Medinan period. So a fiqh, by definition, fiqh has linguistic definition and also technical definition. So fiqh linguistically means understanding. Al-fiqh means understanding, right? Linguistically, it means understanding, deep understanding or comprehension. So fiqh linguistically means deep understanding, al-fiqh. And so you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can find this usage. Allah has used the word fiqh, the verb faqaha or faqaha in the Quran, in numerous verses in the glorious Quran. So you can find where Allah said, Ya Shu'aybu ma nafqahu kathiran mimma taqulu. Ya Shu'aybu ma nafqahu kathiran mimma taqulu. So nafqahu, right, is a present tense of what? Faquha or faqaha. So that's it, the meaning. So they are saying, oh Shu'aib, we don't understand most of the things that you are saying. Most of what you are saying, we don't understand. قالوا يا شعيب ما نفقه كثيرا مما تقول. Right? And also, we also have another verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ثم أتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ بين السدين وجد من دونهما قوما لا يكادون يفقهون قولا. So here the word fiqh is also what is used. So it means a deep understanding or comprehension. Okay, and then also when it comes to the technical meaning of fiqh, there are several definitions, but we will go by the definition of Imam Abu Hanifa. It's very concise, very short definition. He said, Al-fiqh ma'rifatu ma lak wa ma alayk. Ma'rifatu ma laka wa ma alayk. So it's what is the knowledge of fiqh. Fiqh, it's knowledge of knowing or knowledge of your right and your responsibility. Right? So it's to know your right and your responsibility. So that's fiqh. That's the definition of fiqh. And then there's also different definitions, long definitions that I don't want us to go into it because of, this is elementary level fiqh. So I don't want us to go into details. So that's also the definition, the technical definition of fiqh. Okay, so let's look at the scope of fiqh, the issues that fiqh discusses, right? So fiqh as a science, it's what it discusses issue of ibadat. So, we can categorize fiqh under three major headings, right? So we have ibadat, mu'amalat, and then uqubat. So these are the major headings, or the headings under fiqh. Okay, so under each heading, there are different types of legal rulings. Okay, so we have ibadat. If we say ibadat, it covers rulings pertaining purification, both major purification and minor purification, and dry purification as well, right? That's tayammum. And also it's also salah, and all the rulings of salah, azan, iqama, all these are under what? Under salah and under ibadat. And then we also have siyam, we have zakah, we have hajj, right? So all these are what? Under ibadat. Okay, and we have mu'amalat. So mu'amalat also, they are subheadings under mu'amalat, and all these subheadings or topics are legal issues that fiqh discusses. So mu'amalat is what is the main heading, and then under it they are subheadings. So marriage, family, law of family, or law pertaining family, marriage, and then divorce, and also inheritance, and also commerce, trade, all right, and business transactions. All these fall under what? Under mu'amalat. And then also the relation of a Muslim to another Muslim, and also the relation of a Muslim to his parent, the relation of a Muslim to the state, right? So all this is discussed under the major heading mu'amalat, right? And then we also have uqubat. So uqubat, there are things that also fall under under uqubat. That's the punishment, right? That's the crime and punishment as well. So there are many things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited, and also there are punishment for these crimes, right? So all these prohibition and then its punishment fall under uqubat, right? So we've mentioned three main headings of fiqh. That is ibadat, mu'amalat, and then uqubat, right? So we have three. So now let's start with the Meccan period. So is there any question before we proceed?
So you said the mu'amalat is the ruling of legal issues.
Mu'amalat, there are many subtopics that fall under mu'amalat, right? So laws pertaining related to family, so family law, right? So this consists of nikah. What in Islamic law, what do we consider as a legal marriage? Because it's not every marriage that is legal. So according to the definition of Islam, what is a legal marriage? So these fall under what? Under mu'amalat, right? And then if a marriage, so when a marriage is valid, the couple, what is the responsibility of each one of them towards the other? So this is also legal issue that mu'amalat, fiqh al-mu'amalat discusses, right? So also if the marriage is not valid, or is valid but due to certain defect, they want to, both one of the couple want to exit from the marriage, what will be done? This is divorce, and then fasakh, and then khulu. So all these fall under what? Under mu'amalat, right? Okay. And also we have inheritance, right? Inheritance, when a wealthy person die, right, and leave behind legacy or property, okay, what is the portion of the wives and then the children and also other relatives. So fiqh al-mu'amalat also what discusses this. You understand? And then also trade, right? So we have riba and then we have other form of trade. Okay, so as you know, Islam has prohibited riba. Okay, and then there are also trade, form of trade or business transactions that are considered what valid. So fiqh al-mu'amalat discusses this. Okay, and then is this okay? That's clear. Okay, so now let's move on to how fiqh started in the Meccan period to the Medinan period and to the time and how it continued in the time of the Sahaba. So fiqh started in Mecca, but Mecca mostly we have the understanding that in Meccan period it was purely creedal issue and ethical issue, right? It was purely creedal issue and ethical issue. So if you say creedal issue, we are referring to what? Aqidah. So it is the stage where the Prophet ﷺ tried to build the Iman and strengthen to build the Iman, the foundation of Iman and Islam in what? In Mecca, right? So mostly that's how the discussion starts. But we don't hear that there are certain legal legislation in Mecca, but there are many legal issues or things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated in Mecca, right? Okay, so what are these issues and these laws in Mecca? So in Mecca, aside the creedal issues, purification was legislated in Mecca, right? It was legislated in Mecca. Allah said to the Prophet, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, kum fa'anzir, wa rabbaka fakabbir, wa thiyabaka fatahir. So wa thiyabaka fatahir, and what? Purify your clothes, your dress. I understand. And then also Salah was legislated in Mecca, right? Salah was legislated in Mecca. And then the Qibla was also legislated in Mecca, because in Mecca they used to face what? Baitul Maqdis, right? They used to face Baitul Maqdis to pray. But when the Prophet migrated to Medina, then it was changed from Baitul Maqdis to where? To the Kaaba in Mecca, right? So the first legislation was what? To the Baitul Maqdis, right? And this is what is a legal issue. So it was also in Mecca, right? And also there are issues like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Isra. He said, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاكٍ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ إِنَّ قَتْلَهُمْ كَانَ خِطْئًا كَبِيرًا. So here Allah has prohibited what? Killing. So they should know what? They should not kill their children or their babies in fear of what? Poverty, right? So this is a prohibition, and it's a legal issue, and it was legislated in Mecca, right? So also there's also in the same page Allah said wala taqrabu zina. So this also was in Mecca, right? And it's also a legal issue. And also continue to say wala taqtulu an-nafs allati harrama Allahu illa bil haqq. And do not kill an innocent soul that Allah has forbidden for it to be killed. Do not kill an innocent soul. So this is a prohibition that was legislated in Mecca, right? But the punishment of the person who killed an innocent soul was legislated in where? In Medina. You understand? But the prohibition of killing an innocent soul was legislated in Mecca, right? So Allah also said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا مَالَ الْيَتِيمِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. And do not get close or do not squander or spend unjustly the wealth of what? Orphans. This is also what? Prohibition, and also what? It's a legal issue. Right? And also the same chapter, وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ. وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ. When you promise or pledge something, you should honor and fulfill that pledge. Right? So all these are what? All these are legal issues that was what? Legislated in Mecca. Right? So Mecca was not only a period of what? Of establishing the creedal issue and also ethical issue. But they were also what? They were also there were also legal issues that was legislated in Mecca. So this period, the period lasted for how many years? How long did the Prophet live in Mecca?
30.
30 or 13?
13.
13. 30 or 13?
13.
1 3?
No.
Okay, yeah, that's it. I thought you were saying 30. Alright, so yeah, that's it. It's this period lasted for 13 years. And then the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina. And then I forgot to mention that even in Mecca they used to fast. Yeah, they used to fast Yom Ashura. Yeah, because only Yom Ashura. I mean, fasting of Ramadan was legislated in Medina, not in Mecca. But they were fasting, they used to fast Yom Ashura. Even the Quraysh, the polytheists of Mecca, they used to fast Yom Ashura. According to what? According to authentic reports. Okay, so this also what? A legislation and what? In Mecca. I hope it's clear. So now, let's move on to Medina. So the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina. So how long was his stay in Medina?
26.
26 in Medina. Only in Medina. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. So he lived in Medina for 26 years. And the period of Wahy, his prophethood, lasted for 23 years. But he lived in Medina for 26 years. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. No, his stay in Medina lasted for 10 years. Yeah, for 10 years, not 26 years. Yeah, because he lived in Mecca for 53 years. Right, so he lived in Mecca since he was born for 40 years before he became a prophet. And after he became a prophet, he stayed in Mecca for 13 years, making it 53 years, right? Okay. Then he migrated to Medina and stayed for 10 years, right? So he died at the age of 63 years, right? And then the period of his prophethood lasted for 23 years, right? So his stay in Medina can't be 26 years. Allah. All right, so when the Prophet migrated to Mecca, most of the legal issues were what? Legislated in Medina. Sorry, when he migrated to Medina, most of the verses and the chapters that was revealed in Medina was what? Legal verses. Whereas in Mecca, most of the verses were what? Creedal and ethical, but with little what? Legal issues also, right? So when the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, there were a lot of legal issues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, or that was legislated at that time. So these issues like the issue of changing of the Qibla, it happened in the second year, right? In the second year, because that was after 16 months. After the 16th month, the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina. So that was what? In the second year the early part of what? The second year. So in the second year, actually, many act of worship or legal issue were what? Enacted, right? So the changing of the Qibla happened in what? In the second year, right? So in Mecca, where were they facing to pray?
They were facing to Beit al-Maqdis.
Where they were facing Beit al-Maqdis. Okay. So in Medina, this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed the Qibla from Beit al-Maqdis to Mecca. As Allah said, قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. Right? So faced, we've seen that you wish that the Qibla could be changed to the Kaaba. And we shall what? We shall change the Qibla to please your Prophet. So change or face what? Face towards the Kaaba in prayer. So that was when the Qibla was changed from Beit al-Maqdis to the Kaaba, right? So that was this happened in what? In the second year, right?
May.
Huh?
Was it not just May or
What?
May?
May?
Yes.
What?
Since it's the 16th of like the 16th month after that's the early second.
Yeah.
So in our calendar it's May.
No, it can't be May.
So the changing of the Qibla, so now the Sahaba of the Prophet proposed to him and it became...
No. They did not propose, but the Prophet ﷺ loved that the Qibla could change. I mean, Allah would change the Qibla to Beit al-Maqdis. So he used to pray and wish that Allah would change the Qibla, avert the Qibla to Beit al-Maqdis, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to what? His wish and his prayer, right? So in such issues, the Sahabas don't propose anything like it should be changed or something. No, the Sahabas did not do that, right? So this happened like that. But before that, the Azan was also what legislated. So when Muslims settled in Medina, and then the mosque of the Prophet was built, this was done in what? In the first year, right? So the mosque of the Prophet in Medina was built in the first year of Hijrah. So after the mosque was built, many Sahabas migrated from different cities, from Mecca especially, and other cities to Medina, to be with the Prophet. So when they came, there were a huge population of Muslims in what? In Medina. So they sat down one day to ask, okay, how do we call for prayer when it's time? Because how people will not know whether it's time for prayer or not, okay? And also, don't forget that the time of prayer was also legislated in Mecca. Because, when the Prophet ﷺ took that night journey, that's Isra wal Mi'raj, the 5 daily prayer was what? Given to him, and then he came. So Jibril also came and then taught the Prophet how to pray and when to pray. Right? As the report of Mu'atta said, he said, Nazala fasalla Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yani Jibril, he came down to pray, and then the Prophet also prayed with him. And then ثم نزل فصلى رسول الله 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 5 times. And then after that he said بهذا أمرت or بهذا أمرت. So between these times that we prayed, this is what you are commanded. This is a time of prayer that you are commanded to pray these prayers in, right? So he was also taught how to the time of prayer. Okay, so the time of prayer was also legislated in Mecca, right? So when they came to Medina, they already know the time of prayer, right? But how do they call people to prayer? Right? So in Azan, in Mecca, because of the situation that they found themselves, the circumstance that they found themselves, this torture and then, punishment from the polytheists, from the mushrikun of Mecca, they did not even think of coming up with a way of calling people to prayer, because they were what? They were still hiding, they were in fear. So you can't even think of how to call people to what? To prayer. Okay, so they did not think of that. So but when they got to Medina, Medina was what? Populated by what? By Muslims and what? And Jews. Okay, so but the Muslims were what? Were the majority. Okay, so they sat down one day and they said, now we are in Medina, we have no enemies here. Of course the Jews were there, but they were in good terms with them, because there was a constitution of Medina that all of them were abiding by, right? So they were coexisting. Okay, so now they came up, okay, how do we call people to prayer, right? So some of them suggested that they should use what? The horn, right? Has the Jews used to, has the Jews use. And some also said they should use the bell as the Christians, right? And then, but they did not agree on anything. They did not arrive at anything, any decision. So they went home, and then at night they saw, many people saw dreams of what? The Azan, as we know it today, right? So this happened what? In the first year of Hijrah. Okay.
So the Azan was revealed to everyone?
Not everyone, like Umar, and there's also other Sahabahs who saw the dream, right? So this is what happened in the first year. This was legislated in the first year. And then the second year, many things were legislated. The fasting of the month of Ramadan was what was in the second year of Hijrah, right? And then Zakah was also what? In the second year of what? Of Hijrah. And also Zakat al-Fitr as well, in the second year of what? Of Hijrah. And then Hajj and Umrah was in the 6th year of Hijrah. Okay, so like that. So that's how it continues. So now we know how it started from the Meccan period to the Medinan period, right? So now what was the sources of what? Of law in the time of the Prophet ﷺ? So when the Sahabahs are confronted with issues, how do they get the answers? How do they get the ruling to that issue or to that, so at the time of the Prophet, when there's something, the Sahabahs need something, or they want to know something about their religion, they go directly to the Prophet ﷺ to ask him, right? So the Prophet was what? Their point of reference. If they need something, they go to him, they ask him, or ask the learned among the Sahabahs. So that's how it continues. So when they come to the Prophet, and then it is issue that Allah has not yet revealed any verse on it, then the Prophet will sometimes wait for revelation to come down, to answer the question, right? And sometimes too, when they ask him, Allah will not reveal, but Allah will reveal to him what to say. That is what the Sunnah, right? And sometimes too, Allah will not reveal any verse, nor any revelation from the Sunnah, but the Prophet will do ijtihad, right? He will use his reasoning based on the general principles of Islam, and then give a ruling.
So it means that even the Sunnah is not from the Prophet.
The Sunnah is not from the Prophet, because everything, both the Quran and the Sunnah, is wahy, right? But the difference is that the Quran, both the wording and the meaning, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Sunnah, the meaning is from Allah, but the wording is from the Prophet. So Allah will reveal to the Prophet the meaning of what to say, then he will use his own wording to teach. You understand? So that's the difference between what? Between the Quran and the Sunnah. Right? So, but all the Quran and the Sunnah, both, it's what? Wahy. You get it? So we will discuss that when we get to the sources of law in Maliki school of thought. We will discuss this in great detail. So when they need something, when the Sahabahs needed something, or they want to learn or know something, they go to the Prophet. So you'll find a lot of verses that was revealed in Medina saying وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ. So you find وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عن المحيض قل هو أذى فاعتزل النساء في المحيض حتى يطهر فإذا تطهرن فأتوهن من حيث أمركم الله. Right. So here they were asking you concerning concerning menstruation. Tell them beware of what? Of its harm, and do not have intercourse with your wife until they are what? They are purified. Right? So here they wanted to know the ruling of what? Menstruation and the menstrual blood. So they went and asked the Prophet, and then a verse was what? A verse was revealed. Right? So from the same type of kind of verses, they also came and then asked the Prophet, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. So they were asking you about the crescent, the new moon, right? So وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. It is what? It is made for what? For you to determine time. Hajj, and to also know the time of Hajj. Right? So they came and asked, and then revelation came. And also they came and asked, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا المهم. So that's it. That's قل فيهما إثم كبير قل فيهما إثم ويسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. Right? So they were asking you about intoxicants and gambling. Right? Tell them that there's but the harm in it outweigh the benefit. Right? So this was what a question that they asked the Prophet, and what he answered. And then also وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الشَّهْرِ الْحَرَامِ كِتَالٍ فِيهِ. They were asking you also what? Engaging in a battle or fighting in the cause of Allah in the month, in the secret month. Right? So a verse was also what revealed. So they sometimes also come and ask him about facts about the universe, right? And also about life, not only legal issues. So there were many verses that was revealed in the time of the Prophet, both in the Meccan period and in the Medinan period. So some of the issues that are not legal issues that they asked was وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. Right? But this was not from the Sahabahs, it's from the Jewish community. So they came to test the Prophet. Right? So it's happened like that, and then many verses like that. Okay. But in the time of the Prophet too, there were no disagreements. There were no consensus. So in the sense that whatever the Quran says and whatever the Prophet says is final. There's no second opinion. Right? So disagreement and also consensus started after the life of the Prophet. So that's how it started. So Either the Quran will be revealed to answer certain legal issues, or the Prophet, or it will be revealed to the Prophet to what, to teach them. Because the Sunnah is what, the explanatory of what, of the Quran. Is the Quran, is the Sunnah that discuss, that explain the Quran, is the Sunnah that discuss, or sorry, that explain what the Quran meant to the Muslims. Okay, so that's how it continued till the death of the Prophet ﷺ. So after the Prophet died, now if there is a legal issue, what do the Sahabas do? What do they do? In the time of the Prophet, they used to go to the Prophet, then the Prophet will answer, or a revelation will be revealed to him, right? So now the Prophet ﷺ is no more. It's not around. It's not around. So how do they, what were they doing? And then if the Prophet ﷺ was not around, then it means that no revelation will be sent down. Right? So here, in the time of the Prophet, we said the sources were the Quran and the Sunnah, right? Okay. But in the time of the Sahabas, these sources increased. Yes, it increased. Why? Because of the demise of the Prophet ﷺ. So in the time of the Sahabas. But before we go into that, we have to understand that when the Prophet ﷺ died, there were about 114,000 Sahabas. 114,000 Sahabas alive at that time, right? And then these Sahabas, all of them were not scholars. Yes, all of these Sahabas were not scholars. And the scholars, I mean the Mujtahidun, if we say Mujtahid is someone who has gotten to the level that he or she can give independent ruling on a legal issue. This is a Mujtahid. So the Mujtahidun among the Sahabas were about 162 out of this number. So it's not this level of ijtihad. It's not something easy that everyone can attain. But of course, there are also scholars among the Sahabas who have not reached the level of what? The level of ijtihad. You get it? So, in that time, these were the number of what mujtahidun among the Sahabas, right? So some of them.
162.
Yeah, 162.
Not 32.
162. Yeah. So among them were Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Umar,
Abdullah ibn Umar.
Yeah, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and Zayd ibn Thabit, Ubay ibn Ka'b, and other Sahabas as well. So these are some of the Sahabas who have reached the level of what ijtihad. So at that time, when there is a legal issue or something novel that happened, so what they do is they refer to the Quran. If they find something, if the Quran has spoken about it, then they use they will use that verse or that ruling from the Quran. If they can't find in the Quran, they will look into the Sunnah. If they can find an answer to that issue, then they use that ruling from the Sunnah. But if they can't find these two, what do? The Prophet was not there. Who would they ask? How would they get the answer? You understand? So in that situation, what did they do? They will engage in consultation. So the Amir, the ruler, the head of the believers, the leader of the believers, will call the Mujtahidun among the Sahabas, and then consult them on the issue. So when they agree on something, right? When they agree on something based on the general principles of Islam, then he will use that consensus. So that's how consensus came came about. You understand? But of course, this consensus, it's not just something out of the Islamic jurisprudence. No, they use the general maxims, the wisdom, and the objectives of Islam to conclude on something. You understand? So that's how it was. So, and then they also use what? Analogy. So this analogy we will explain in great detail. So at the time of the Sahabahs, there were many disagreements that happened, and there were also many consensus on issues that happened at the time of Sahabahs. Of course, because the Sahabahs are human, so they think differently, they also understand differently. So differences and disagreement is bound to happen. You understand? So at that time there were disagreement among the Sahabahs on certain issues, right? And also their consensus of the Sahabahs on certain issues. So that's where these differences also started. Okay, so a Sahaba will look at certain verses or hadith on a certain issue, then he'll give a ruling, then another Sahaba will look at it and give another ruling. So this led to issue of madhahib, right? Issue of madhahib that we'll be discussing in our next lesson. So in our next lesson we will look at the time of the tabi'un and atba'i tabi'in. So this time till the time of Imam Malik, what happened and how did fiqh continue till the time of Imam Malik. So when we get to the time of Imam Malik, then we discuss about the life of Imam Malik and then his sources of deliberation, and also before we start reading our book. So is there any question? Okay, so if there's no question, let's pause here and continue next week inshallah. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.